Charleston White is now saying young Thug and people around him threatened his life at a public event, and he is talking about taking it as far as possible, pressing charges, calling Thug's probation officer, and even reaching out to federal authorities. That is why this story matters. This is not just internet drama anymore. If even part of what White is claiming can be backed up, it could create real problems for young Thug. So let's break down what allegedly happened, why the tension was already there, and what this could mean for Thug going forward. It all goes back to Saturday night, March 28, 2026, when Druski hosted a reunion event in Miami for his dating show Could Have Been Love. The room was packed, the guest list was crowded, and like most events built around internet personalities and rap culture, it brought together people who normally should not be in the same space. Young Thug was there, still keeping a relatively low profile after getting out of jail in late 2024. Charleston White was there too, a man who has built his name off saying the loudest and most disrespectful thing possible about the biggest names in hip-hop. These two had been going at each other online for a long time, so the moment they ended up in the same place, it was never going to feel casual. According to the reports in the videos Charleston posted right after, that online tension turned into a face-to-face confrontation. White says young Thug approached him at the event, and from that point, everything escalated fast. The exact words depend on whose version you believe, but White wasted no time putting his story out there. He jumped on Instagram almost immediately, filming from the scene and shouting toward Thug and his camp from a distance. In the captions and videos, he accused young Thug and his entourage of threatening to kill him and trying to physically attack him in public. White claimed Thug walked up and told him, "You're going to lose your life right here." He also made a point of saying this happened on what he described as FAA property in Miami, arguing that the statement amounted to a terroristic threat. Then he took it a step further. He said one of the people with Thug had a gun during the exchange, and he claimed witnesses saw that person clutching the weapon. Those are serious allegations by themselves, but in Thug's case, the bigger issue is what those accusations could trigger legally. Would you take that seriously? That is because young Thug is not moving around as a free man with a clean slate. In December 2024, he entered a no-contest plea to racketeering and gang charges, and pleaded guilty to drug, gun, and lesser gang-related offenses. The result was time served, 15 years of probation, and a 2-0-year suspended sentence hanging over his head. That means if a judge decides he violated probation, Thug could theoretically be sent back to prison for 2 full decades. That is the part Charleston White clearly understands, and it is why his response sounded less like regular trash talk and more like a direct threat to Thug's freedom. In his videos, White looked straight into the camera and spoke as if young Thug was watching him in real time. He focused on the language Thug allegedly used, especially the word "we." White's argument was simple. If Thug said "we step on" instead of "I," then White believes that sounds like gang language, and gang-related language is exactly the kind of thing that could get Thug looked at under the terms of his probation. White then said he planned to press charges, file for a restraining order, and start making calls on Monday, March 30th, to police, probation, and anybody else willing to listen. Whether he follows through is another question, but the pressure point he is aiming at is obvious. To understand how this even got here, you have to go back before Miami. This did not start at that event. Charleston White has spent years building a career around disrespecting rappers, questioning their credibility, and saying out loud what most people would only whisper behind closed doors. With young Thug, though, the attacks got more personal once the YSL RICO case took over Atlanta's rap scene. White was not just commenting from the sidelines. He inserted himself into one of the worst chapters of Thug's life and turned it into content. The YSL RICO case was one of the biggest and most talked about criminal trials the music world has seen. The indictment landed in May 2022 and named young Thug, along with 27 others tied to YSL, which prosecutors argued was not just a music label, but a criminal street gang connected to the Bloods. The charges included racketeering, murder, armed robbery, drug trafficking, and more. Thug was arrested that same month and then spent more than 2 years behind bars while the case dragged on. The trial became a spectacle, streamed, debated, clipped, and reposted non-stop like it was a courtroom reality series. During that entire period, Charleston White became one of the loudest outside voices talking about it. He went on podcasts, live streams, and social media and kept pressing every angle that would upset Thug's supporters. He questioned the loyalty inside YSL. He talked about plea deals, cooperators, and cracks inside the group. He mocked the image that surrounded Thug and his people, and when the backlash came, he did not pull back. He pushed harder. That is part of why seeing these two men in the same room was always dangerous. This was not a random clash. This was years of public disrespect finally becoming physical space. Then another moment added fuel to the fire. A video resurfaced online showing young Thug talking to investigators during a 2015 interrogation. In the clip, he could be heard discussing Pee Wee Roscoe, who had been linked to the shooting of Lil Wayne's tour bus that year. The audio spread quickly, and the internet did what it always does. It took a complicated clip and turned it into a simple accusation. People started calling Thug a snitch. Even though Roscoe later came out and said Thug was not telling on him, the narrative had already started moving, and Charleston White was one of the loudest people pushing it. White posted a long, harsh response and accused Thug of hypocrisy. His point was that if Thug and his supporters were going to criticize Gunna or anybody else for allegedly cooperating, then Thug had to answer for speaking to investigators at all. White brought up the most basic rule people repeat about police interviews. You have the right to remain silent, and anything you say can be used against you. His message was blunt. If you claim you do not talk to police, then why did you sit there and talk for hours? From there, he attacked Thug's image directly, basically telling him to give up the tough guy jersey and sit with the tattletales. He went even further by saying the entire YSL situation was full of people who talk too much, not just in interrogation rooms, but on their own songs. To White, they were not just being investigated. They were helping build the case with their own lyrics and public behavior. For a fan base already defensive about the YSL case, that was the kind of attack people do not forget. For Charleston White, it was just another day creating chaos. That is why Saturday night matters so much. When Young Thug reportedly saw him in Miami, he was not looking at a stranger. He was looking at someone who had spent months publicly calling him a fraud, a snitch, and worse, while his life was already under a legal microscope. Young Thug did respond to those snitching claims at the time. He posted on X and suggested his interrogation clip was never played in court because he was actually trying to help his associate, not hurt him. Pee Wee Roscoe also defended him and said Thug was trying to help pull him out of a hole, not bury him deeper. But by then, the online court had already made up its mind, and Charleston White had helped make sure of that. He did not invent all the criticism, but he absolutely amplified it. And once that happens on the internet, it does not really go away. It just waits for the next real-life moment to attach itself to. So if White's version of the Miami confrontation is accurate, the consequences could be serious. If Thug really told him he was going to lose his life right there, and if one of the people with Thug was armed at the time, then that is not a small incident. Those are the kind of allegations that could lead to charges and immediately raise probation questions. For somebody sitting on 15 years of probation and a 20-year suspended sentence, even one confirmed violation could be disastrous. That is the real danger here. Not just a viral moment, but paperwork that could send Thug back to court. And what makes the situation even more unstable is that this is not really a feud between equals. Young Thug is one of the most influential rappers of his era. His style changed the sound of modern rap. Charleston White is a professional provocateur, somebody who survives by saying outrageous things about people with real fan bases, real influence, and in some cases, real street ties. That imbalance is a big reason this story feels so combustible. White pokes at powerful people for a living, and Young Thug is exactly the kind of person you do not want turning internet disrespect into an in-person issue. At the same time, White is not new to stories about being in danger. In October 2024, social media exploded with rumors that he had been shot in Chicago. Some posts even included what sounded like a 911 call, which made the hoax spread even faster. White later posted a video laughing it off and saying nobody was going to get him in Chicago because he does not even go there. Then it happened again on January 13, 2026, when another account claimed he had been shot 3 times in Fort Worth and was in critical condition. That rumor spread fast too, and once again White came online to deny it, pointing out that he does not even live in Fort Worth. He lives in Miami. That pattern matters because Charleston White operates in a strange lane. He provokes people tied to dangerous circles, and in return, the internet constantly creates fake stories about him finally getting hurt. Some of those stories are probably pranks. Some may be attempts to scare him. Either way, he lives in an online world where danger is always part rumor, part performance, and sometimes maybe real. That is why this latest claim hits differently. This time he is saying it was not a hoax, not a tweet, not a rumor, but a real in-person threat with witnesses, video, and a specific target, Young Thug. Now step back from the drama and look at the legal reality. Young Thug got out of jail on October 31st, 2024, after spending over 2 years locked up while the YSL case played out. The probation terms tied to that plea deal are extremely strict. He is supposed to stay out of trouble, avoid new arrests, avoid weapons, avoid gang-related conduct, and avoid association that could put him back in legal jeopardy. If he slips, that 20-year suspended sentence is still sitting there. One bad finding could erase the freedom he fought for and put him back behind bars for a very long time. That is why Charleston White threatening to call Thug's probation officer is not just internet theatrics. In a case like this, paperwork can do more damage than yelling. A complaint backed by videos, witness accounts, and specific allegations can trigger an investigation. An investigation can turn into a hearing, and a hearing can turn into a revocation. If that happens, this stops being a viral clip and becomes a legal crisis. The biggest weapon White may be holding here is not his phone camera. It is the possibility of forcing authorities to take a closer look. Of course, it is still unclear how far White will actually go. He said Monday was the day he planned to make those calls, but he also has a long history of saying the most explosive thing possible on camera. That is part of his brand. He knows how to stir a situation, dominate the conversation for a news cycle, and then move on. So the big question is whether this is a real legal push or just another example of Charleston White turning conflict into content. Either way, Young Thug is now in a bad position because even if no charges ever get filed, the footage and the claims are already out there. And that brings us to one of the most important corrections in this whole story. A lot of people online have been running with the idea that Young Thug's crew attacked Charleston White's house. That is the headline people have been repeating, but it is not what the confirmed reports say right now. Everything documented so far points to an altercation at Druski's Could Have Been Love reunion event in Miami on Saturday, March 28th. White's own videos describe it as something that happened at the event, on what he says was FAA property. As of now, he has not posted verified evidence showing his house was targeted. That does not automatically mean more did not happen later. New details can always come out. But based on what has actually been put on the record so far, this was a confrontation at a public event, not a home attack. And that matters, because social media has a habit of taking one real incident and inflating it into something even bigger before the facts have time to settle. A heated confrontation becomes an armed ambush. A threat at a party becomes a house attack. Once that version spreads, people start reacting to the exaggeration instead of the confirmed details. The confirmed core of the story is already serious enough. Young Thug and Charleston White had a confrontation in Miami. White says he was threatened. He says somebody in Thug's entourage had a gun. He says he plans to press charges and contact the people overseeing Thug's probation. Those claims are documented in his own videos. What is not confirmed, at least right now, is the idea that Thug's crew attacked his house. That part appears to be internet inflation, not established fact. What happens next depends on whether White follows through. If he files charges, police will have to look at the evidence. If they investigate, prosecutors will have to decide whether anything can actually be proved. If they believe it can, then Thug's lawyers will have to respond fast. White's side will likely argue that a man on probation for gang-related charges approached him with threatening language while surrounded by armed associates. Thug's side will almost certainly argue that no real threat was made, no weapon was involved, and that Charleston White is an unreliable provocateur who profits off conflict. Both sides may end up with witnesses. Both sides may point to video. And somewhere in the middle, people in authority will have to decide what really happened. For now, that is where things stand. Nothing White has said has been officially confirmed, and that part matters too. Allegations are not convictions. Viral clips are not court findings. But what we do know is still significant. Two men who had been on a collision course for months finally ended up in the same place, and the fallout could be serious for both of them. For young Thug, it could put the freedom he spent years fighting for back at risk. For Charleston White, it could either validate his claims or become one more chapter in a career built on provocation, controversy, and moments that always seem to sit somewhere between real danger and public performance. Either way, the internet is locked in. Monday is coming, and if White means what he says, the next phase of this story may happen through phone calls, reports, and whatever lands on a probation officer's desk next.